How is Iraq pulling in billions from oil, gas, and taxes yet the dinar is still stuck at 1,310? With over $16 trillion in revenue over the years, something doesn't add up. Let's break down the real story behind the numbers they don't want you to question. Let's talk about something that just doesn't add up, and I mean it really doesn't make any sense when you sit down and start putting the numbers together. We're talking about the exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar, currently held at 1,310. The big question that keeps floating around, and honestly, it's one that needs serious attention, is how on earth is that number supported, when you start looking at the real financial foundation of Iraq. Now, I know some people will say the 1,310 rate is backed by this or that, a government policy, stabilization goals, or maybe even to maintain competitive exports. But when you look at the raw financial data, at the revenues Iraq brings in every year from all sources and not just oil, it paints a completely different picture. Let's walk through it together, because if this doesn't make you question the whole setup, I don't know what will. First off, Iraq is not some broke, struggling country when it comes to natural resources. Let's get that clear. We're sitting on top of massive oil reserves, among the top in the world. And it's not just about having it in the ground, we're actually exporting millions of barrels per day. Just from oil alone, Iraq is raking in billions. In some years, we're talking over $100 billion in revenue purely from crude oil exports. That's not pocket change. But oil is just the beginning. Then we have gas, liquefied natural gas, LNG, which is becoming an increasingly valuable resource as the world shifts from coal and oil toward cleaner burning fuels. Iraq's potential in LNG is only just beginning to be tapped, but it's there. And when we start developing this sector further, it's going to add tens of billions more into our economy every single year. That's money that goes straight to the government's balance sheet. And what about non-oil revenues? This is another area people don't pay enough attention to. Iraq collects taxes, both personal and corporate. We have customs tariffs at the borders, income taxes, licensing fees, telecom revenue, and service fees from government sectors. It's not as much as oil brings in, a true but it still adds several billions of dollars every year into government coffers. Combine that with loans, foreign aid, and reconstruction funding that comes in, and you're talking about serious national income. If we tally it all up, Iraq's revenue on a good year, with oil prices stable and production uninterrupted, can hit close to $150 to $160 billion, maybe more. And over multiple years, you're looking at over $1 trillion in total financial capacity. Some analysts even project Iraq has the potential to support a multi-trillion-dollar economy over the next decade if reforms go through and production increases. This is not a small or weak economy. So here's the problem: if you've got that kind of income, that kind of economic weight, why is your currency being traded at 1,310 to the dollar? Let's be real, this exchange rate doesn't reflect Iraq's true wealth. It doesn't represent the strength of its exports, or the amount of foreign currency it brings in, or the gold and USD reserves sitting in the central bank. It's almost as if someone's artificially holding the rate down. And that might be exactly what's happening. In a logical financial world, a country with Iraq's revenues should have a much stronger currency. If you're bringing in billions every month from oil and gas, if your central bank is stockpiling US dollars and gold, if your reserves are growing, and if you're running a trade surplus, meaning you're exporting more than you're importing, your currency should go up in value, not stay flat or depreciate. But that hasn't happened with the Iraqi dinar. In fact, since the early 2000s, we've seen the value of the dinar be suppressed, first as a result of war and occupation, then due to corruption, mismanagement, and now, many would argue, due to foreign control over Iraq's financial policy. That's right, a control. Because let's not forget, the exchange rate isn't just about market forces. It's also about central bank decisions, international agreements, and in Iraq's case, influence from external parties like the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve. So again, if we're bringing in over $16 trillion in value over 2 decades through oil exports, gas potential, tax revenues, customs, international aid, and all the other economic activity, how can 1,310 still make sense? It doesn't. Not on paper. Not in real-world economics. Not in theory, and certainly not in practice. The Iraqi dinar should be way stronger. It should have revalued by now, or at least shown signs of strengthening. But it hasn't, and that's the core of the issue. We need to ask who benefits from keeping the dinar weak. Because somebody always benefits. When the dinar stays undervalued, the black market thrives. Corruption becomes easier. Smuggling cash, manipulating exchange houses, and funneling US dollars out of Iraq becomes a lot simpler. And of course, those who hold large amounts of foreign currency gain more purchasing power in Iraq. The people losing out. Everyday Iraqis, the middle class, the poor, and anyone earning in dinars who has to buy goods priced in dollars. Inflation hits them hard, and salaries don't keep up. On top of all this, Iraq's economy is still heavily dollarized. Many transactions, say even rent, car sales, and high-end purchases are still done in dollars, not dinars. That tells you right there that people don't have confidence in the local currency. And honestly, can you blame them? The central bank says one thing, the government says another, and meanwhile, the rate stays locked at 13.10 while the streets feel like the real rate is somewhere else entirely. But there is hope. Reforms are happening, even if slowly. The government has started to crack down on corruption in the currency auctions. They've begun linking more directly with international financial systems, and they're pushing toward digital payments and banking transparency. If this continues, and that's a big if, we might eventually see the groundwork laid for a stronger dinar. But it's going to take pressure from the people, from honest politicians, and from Iraqis in the diaspora who care about the country's economic future. Because here's the truth, Iraq deserves a strong currency. The people deserve a stable economy. And the country has everything it needs to achieve that: the resources, revenue, trade routes, and human talent. What it needs now is policy change. Transparency. Leadership that values national sovereignty over foreign influence. And a clear, data-driven plan to get the dinar to a realistic value. Until then, 1,310 is just a number, one that doesn't match the math, doesn't reflect the reality, and definitely doesn't represent the potential of Iraq. We need to stop accepting it as normal and start asking the hard questions. Where is the wealth going? Why isn't it reflected in the exchange rate? And who's standing in the way of a revaluation that would finally match the true economic power of Iraq? Thanks for tuning into Iraqi Dinar Updates. Let's keep asking the questions others want and keep pushing for the answers Iraq needs.